Hello and welcome to All Stats and We, a podcast in which Leeds fans cast their combined eye over goings-on at Ellen Road, giving scrutiny to the underlying statistics and tactical footings at work at Leeds United. I'm Tom Hosty and I'm joined again today by Martin Riley, the man who never stops. It might be Christmas, but yeah, he's not stopping. How are you, Martin?
I'm doing not too badly, thank you. Day off work today, and we're recording at a very strange time, I must say.
No tea time chat today.
No.
What have you had for breakfast?
I had some toasted tea cakes with like fruit tea cakes with butter. Nice. And yeah, that was all I've eaten today. We're at 1 o'clock, and I'm going to have some lunch after we've done this. How about you?
Yeah, I've also not. Well, I've just had a Baby Bell just before we started because I was like, let's have something to keep me going. But I had some cereal this morning. I have cereal cereal. If you don't know what that one is the protein dense cereal. So shock. That's the one that I have these days. I've got one breast of chicken to cook straight after this as well. I've then also got some more meetings at work. I'm still working, so I've got meetings this afternoon. But then I also want to go into town and go get something to cook myself for Christmas dinner rather than having to do it tomorrow. Because I don't know what time place is going to shut tomorrow.
What meat are you having on Christmas Day?
I'll probably go beef.
Good choice.
Yeah, I basically need to go get everything. Beef, potatoes.
We've got the majority of our Christmas stuff sorted, but ours is a lot more hectic than what yours will be.
Mine's me. Mine is me.
You and Glenn.
Me
of
and
course.
Glenn. Yeah, me and Glenn. So obviously when I make beef, he can have some as well. And yeah, it's just me and Glenn. My mum is working over Christmas. My dad's at my stepsister's. I've already seen my dad and I'm seeing my mum on Sunday. But yeah, so I'll be going to the pub on Christmas Day for 3 hours. And I'm the bar manager who I think she's working on her own, but she broke her foot on Thursday.
Excellent.
So I've said I'll go down and I'll, for a couple of free pints, maybe do glass collecting for them as well and just help out.
Very good of you, your Christmas charity.
Yeah, there we go. That's my Christmas spirit. But yeah, so that's kind of a bit of a hectic day despite not having much work to do. But I am still at work. But yeah, enough about that, although I'm sure everyone else is having a great time having time off for Christmas. If you're not, I feel you. But on to the serious stuff. We are going to talk to you through Sunderland today. We all know them, and one for the Discord. This is Nat Ellis's Sunderland. Big fan of Regis Libris is our Nat, and we don't have an opposition fan. Nat didn't want to come on, but we'll do the best that we can. We had a big debrief with that, and we'll do the best that we can. There's no point really discussing too much on Sunderland. Everyone kind of knows the story of them being promoted last year. We were with them, obviously, within that promotion race, and they beat Sheffield United in that final, which I got to experience with a bunch of Sunderland fans at a wedding, actually, that day. That was a fantastic little day. I was celebrating like I was a Sunderland fan, thinking that they would be the bottom club. They'll be the team that are on 2 points, 20th at this point of the season. But how wrong I was, and part of that is down to some of their transfer activity. It's been well publicised, obviously, that Sunderland won the transfer window. They brought in a lot of new players this summer and also brought in money thanks to the sale of Joe Bellingham, who went to Borussia Dortmund for like 200 million euros or something. And yeah, that's about right, I think. That was...
Yeah. I think it's about 200 million that he went for. At least I think that's what Steph in the Discord was telling me recently. So yeah, I'm going by what he says. But yeah, they've definitely spent a lot of money this summer. They've brought in a lot of players. I'll just list the players now. Habib Diarra from Strasbourg for 31 million. Simon Adingra from Brighton for 24 million. Enzo Lefebvre for 23 million, obviously, who was on loan last season and was brought in permanently. Brian Brobby from Ajax for 20 million. Chemzine Talbi from Club Brugge for 20 million, Noah Siddiqui for 17 million, Granit Xhaka for 15 million, Nordi Mukiele for 12 million, Omar Alderete from Getafe for 11 million, Robin Rose from NEC Nijmegen for 10 million. Nimengan, there we go.
Yeah.
And Bertrand Traore for 2.9, and there's also a bunch of free transfers as well that they brought in. But I don't think we need to go any further into it. You can tell they've spent a lot of money and brought in a lot of players. And then the major sale, obviously, was one you've already mentioned in Joe Bellingham leaving to...
They also got the money for, is it Watson? Tom Watson, who went to Brighton?
Yes, him as well, yeah.
I think, yeah. I can't remember how much that one was for, but that was also a big sale. And that's kind of what has helped them spend that amount of money. There's a couple of reasons. Obviously, with the way that PSR works, you can make those sales and then kind of works out around about 4 times of what you can then spend per sale. So that's why we were kind of discussing if we made a sale of like Pascal Struijk for maybe 20 million in the summer, we'd have had an extra 80 million potentially to play with, 60 to 80 million for a couple of more signings. But the club obviously decided that the best way that they wanted to do was to keep the core of last year and strengthen where they can with the budget that they were able to have, which again was affected due to us being in the Premier League a couple of years before, and then the way that the PSR rules work in the Championship. And we obviously had to make certain sales and certain money stuff with all that PSR, and that's kind of why we only spent what we did. With Sunderland not having had that, having not been in the Premier League for 8 years, I think it is, they had more freedom to spend, and that's kind of what happened. That I'm pretty certain that's about right. Martin, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think you've touched on everything there. They've brought in a lot of money in summer, for at least comparatively to what they've ever been sold in the past few seasons. So that's a good 40 million, I think, between Bellingham and Watson. So that accounts for a massive chunk of PSR profit and win in their favour. And they've pretty much got, like you say, a clean slate in terms of transfers for the Premier League accounting, because it's a totally separate accounting level to what the Championship is. So this is they've basically started their 3-year accounting spell this season. So they're able to do a lot more with the money that they've got than what we were. It's not that our owners don't have the money. They obviously do have money to do that. It's just they don't want to risk potential problems in the future. But it is likely to change because the PSR rules are changing quite drastically for next season, and it's going to be, I believe, revenue based. At least that's one of the factors that they're looking into. So things could change in the future, but for this season, that's why they were able to spend so much more money than we were able to. So it's just worth taking into account that even though they have won the transfer window, they've been able to do that because of the situation they found themselves in. I don't think they were expecting to get promoted this season, to be honest. Obviously they would have liked to, but it wasn't something which they were anticipating, so there wasn't a massive outlay put out for them last season either. I think the only one was the obligation for Lefay. That was the main one, which and that came into this season's accounting. So yeah, it's one of those things where they've been able to do a lot, and it looked like comparatively we haven't done that much. Although I would say that I'm still very happy with the business that we have done, to be honest. And I think most of the fan base is now waking up to that fact, even though we've been pretty big stands for this recruitment that we've done this season. But yeah, it's looking very good with recent results for us.
Yeah, and I think one of the things which was key was why so far they've won it is because every kind of transfer seems to have come off at the moment, which you listed off like an incredible amount of names there. That's rare with that amount of transfers. Like, they make that amount of transfers hoping that basically 30% come off. But they've all kind of worked quite all right at the moment, and we'll see how the Premier League takes its toll on them in the second half of the season. We know it's the most intense league, and we'll get on to a little bit later why there's also another caveat with some of the players that they've signed, which we have discussed previously. But first things first, talk to me, Martin. You've watched a bit more of them than I have. How do they set up in possession? What are they looking to try and do with the ball?
So it's very similar to what they were trying to do last season, to be honest. So they are pretty direct in the way they look to approach the game. They don't really put too much emphasis on possession, and do look to get things forward quickly. A lot of transition play involved in a lot of what they do. They haven't really had a a go-to formation this season as well. There's been some experimentations in the base shape that they've been going out. They started off the season in a 4-3-3, then they had a 4-2-3-1 for a little bit. Then some back five setups, a 5-4-1 and a 3-4-3 for 4 games. Then back to a back 4 for a couple. Then briefly against Man City, a back 5, but they lost quite well in that. And then back to a 4-2-3-1 in the more recent games. So there hasn't been really a shape that they've settled on. That could be due to personnel availability. It could be just game status stuff, so the formation looks different because having less of the ball in certain games, because it can dictate that and what FBref tells us for that. But the main factor is that they're always going to be looking pretty direct, and we'll get into the stats a bit later on, but that does play out as well. So they will look to get the ball quickly to wide areas, look to make use of transition threats. Like they've got likes of Adingra, who's a fantastic transition player, and they've got players like Mayenda and Isidore, who have all got pace in transition as well. So they're built up to attack quickly and effectively from there, while staying solid at the other end.
Yeah, and on the other end, how solid do they look? We know that last year it felt like last year they struggled to hold on to leads, but this year they've been able to hold on to leads quite a bit better. I'm going to ask it in a different way of what do you put that down to? What do you think that's? Because we were discussing it pre-pod as well, so I think this is probably the best way to bring it through.
So I think probably one of the biggest things which is affecting that is the way teams are approaching Sunderland in the Premier League compared to the way they were approaching them in the Championship. Obviously, in the Championship, there was more teams who would be more likely to allow Sunderland to have the ball a bit more and force them to take possession, and that isn't something which they want to do necessarily. And in the Premier League, there's more teams who are like, these guys have just come up, we can dominate the ball against them and really do well against them. But that's exactly what Reggie Slabry wants. He wants the other team to dominate the ball so he can attack quickly in transition, keep things solid. I can't quite put a finger on why they have been able to not concede after going ahead, but the numbers do back it up. The game state numbers do show that they are quite solid when it comes to defending and don't allow too many large chances. Do a good job of defending the box. It could be the better level of players that they brought in, because they have brought in some decent players in the back line. Especially players like Nordi Mukiele, who's I think a really good transition defender and very good 1v1 as well. So that does help out, because I think that was one of their issues last season, was that they didn't have too many good 1v1 defenders, as much as people glazed Trey Hume quite a bit last season. And what else? The other guy in the middle, I forget his name. I forget their player's name, but I think he's currently suspended at the moment for red card, I think. But yeah, they didn't have too many good transition defenders last season, whereas I think this season they have brought in some more players who are better at doing that. So when they do get hit on transition, they are a little bit better at absorbing that. But largely they don't expose themselves to transitions as much, is what I'd say, because if they can get ahead in games, they don't need to commit too many players forward. They'll look to keep things solid, and they have more opportunities to do that in this league than what they will have done in the Championship. And potentially as the season goes on, when more teams start working that out and adjusting the way they play against Sunderland, rather than just viewing them as a relegation team, then things might change as the season goes on and they show Sunderland a bit more respect and maybe sit in against them more and see how they cope with that.
Sorry to interrupt, just a quick one. If you're enjoying the video, be sure to like and subscribe to help us keep the content coming. And if you want even more, you can support us over on patreon.com/ASAW Patreon. You'll get bonus podcasts, exclusive articles, and access to our Discord community, all while helping us make more of the content you love. Thanks. Now let's get back to it. Yeah, I think we said it's kind of maybe similar to when we came up under Bielsa, a little bit of naivety within the teams of, thinking they can play a certain way against us because we were a team that came up. And, it worked in our favour. And then we started to see in the second half of the season, albeit we had a relatively successful end to that first season, it was noted that the underlying numbers were trending the wrong way. And that was due to some teams working out kind of like how to play against us, and then they've more perfected it in that second season, obviously. Yeah, they've conceded 95 shots from outside the box this season, and 136 inside the penalty area. That's quite a lot. That's like just those alone is about 50 more shots than what we've conceded this season. So yeah, despite that, they're still conceding a lot of shots, conceding a lot of XG, running really well on their XG, as you said. But we'll just go first and foremost into the recent form. You've got the whole form table here, because for a newly promoted team, it does look kind of weird, because it looks like a team that is just a normal standard Premier League side, mid-table side.
There's just a lot of wins sandwiched around a fair amount of draws and not very many losses. They've only lost 4 games. They've drawn 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8. And they've 8. Oh, I'm not looking.
6. No, 6. Yeah, 6. You got it right.
Yeah, and then the wins 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wins. So in the last 5, they've had 2 wins: one against Bournemouth, one against Newcastle, which was a very funny old game, that one, with the winning goal, a lovely header. You must say, from Nick Voltemade.
Yeah, it hurt me because I have Nick Voltemade in my fantasy league team. So,
and that looked like a very, very dull game. 0.5 XG put up between both sides.
To be fair, it was not exactly dull, but there just wasn't chances. It was kind of like, it was a derby game that you'd expect it to be.
So very scrappy.
Sort of thing. Very scrappy. Yeah. Very kind of quite entertaining, high energy, but not much quality.
No, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense. And then in the last 5, they've lost against Man City 3-0. They drew against Liverpool 1-1, beat Bournemouth 3-2. Recent draw against Brighton, which looks like it could have gone either way. Put a decent amount of XG for both sides there. But yeah, largely it's obviously been inconsistent, but more in the positive end of things, because they've put up a lot of wins quite early in the season and got a lot of points on the board. So it's be interesting to see how it plays out across the season, because the underlying numbers, let's just say, are varianced.
If you want to go on to the underlying numbers, because I'm going to just mention the fact that apart from the 3-0 win against West Ham at the start of the season, which had an XG of 0.7 versus 0.6, so again, even game where they've just overperformed on their XG, they've only won, and Wolves again, but again in that Wolves game, they lost the XG battle, so to say, 0.6 to 0.8, won that game 2-0, but the rest of their wins have been by 1 goal. And the XG in those games have been incredibly close. So they are very much variancing, there's that famous word of Adams again, their way at the moment to kind of success, to the point of where in the second half of the season, some people might say, well, they've won this many points. How can you imagine that they're not going to win this many points in the next half of the season? It's, well, because at some point in my head, those 1-0 wins or 1-goal wins are going to become 1-goal losses, because they're happening in close games, not games where they're hammering a team and then getting the win by 1 goal. They've not put up more than 1.7 XG once this season, and that was because of the 1.6 against Forest. I just read 1.4 and 0.7 at the same time. That's like not good performances, really, if you're not generating more than 2 in any games. Mm-hmm. But yeah, do you want to delve a little bit more into those stats, do you think?
Yes, I think since it's relevant, we'll skip forward to the stats stuff now, so it makes sense at this point. Yeah. So in terms of the XG they've created, they're the lowest in the league. 14.7 total XG created, but they've scored 19 goals from that 14.7 XG. That's a pretty massive overperformance. So they've scored like 5 more goals, near enough than what they should have done. So yeah, the overperformance there. Non-penalty XG, also the lowest in the league, 13.13 on penalty, scored 17 goals from that. Set piece XG, 12th in the league, so it's a little bit higher when it comes to the set piece XG, and considering their possession numbers aren't that high, I would guess that as a ratio of the amount of set pieces they have compared to their possession, that's a pretty large number, to be honest. So 5.52 they've created from set pieces, which was giving them 6 goals. So there wasn't any real overperformance from the set piece XG, interestingly. But then it's the open play XG where the big amount of the overperformance is 7.61 open play XG, which is a laughable amount of XG at this point of the season, to be honest. And they've scored 11 goals from that 7.61. So, yeah, some massive variance there in terms of the amounts of goals they're scoring from the XG they have created, which is very, very low. Then on the other side of the pitch, in the XG against, they've had the 7th best XG against overall, 22.45 XG against, but they've only conceded 17 goals from that. So, again, a 5-goal overperformance from their goalkeeper, putting up some big numbers there to stop goals. So 5 goals at one end, 5 goals at the other end, pretty much. So that's a 10-goal swing. And considering most of their games are pretty tight, that 10-goal swing is doing a lot of heavy lifting in the way they are this season. Then the non-penalty XG is 11th, 21.66, and conceded 17 goals from that. So again, overperformance from their keeper roofs. Set piece XG against, 4th best, so they do seem to be pretty solid in terms of set piece numbers. 3.96 set piece XG, but only conceded 3 goals, so slight overperformance there, but not as big as the open play overperformance. And then the open play XG against is 17.7 XG against with 14 goals conceded, so it is really the open play where they're overperforming, so both from creating and conceding, they're overperforming their open play stuff, which is bound to swing. Even if it swings a little bit the other way, that can lead to them losing games that they win or drawing games that they win. So that's going to be pretty interesting to see how that swings. And I'll quickly touch on the rest of the stats since I'm already here. The direct attack speed's dead mid-table 10th, so it's pretty average direct speed, which is quite interesting. And then the passes per sequence is 4th lowest, so 3.14 passes per sequence. Direct passing second highest, with 17.6% of their passes played long. 10 plus passing sequences 6th lowest, so 125 10 plus passing sequences. So as I've said before, this plays out with them being pretty direct, not often holding onto the ball long in deeper areas to generate these passing sequences. And then the final bit on the data is the pressing. The third least aggressive press on average with 14.6 passes per defensive action, PPDA. High turnovers are 4th least, 93. Shot ending high turnovers, 10th. So that's a pretty big swing the other way, going from 4th most high turnovers to 10th most shot ending high turnovers. So 17 shot ending high turnovers. And that gives them a percentage of 18.28 of their high turnovers turned into shots, which is the 7th highest. So although they aren't very aggressive overall, when they do win the ball high up, they're pretty good at turning that into a shot. So that's be something to watch out for.
Yeah, and one of the things just with regards to their out of possession and that pressing data is they've actually only conceded 1 penalty this year, which is, for a team that's low blocky, I think sometimes you'd see that can happen a few more times. So that just shocked me now as I was just looking through the stats, because that's the difference, because I noticed that it was just 1 penalty in the XG against when it was a non-penalty XG. I was like, oh, okay. And that was saved, actually, as well, that penalty. So, yeah, they're very similar to exactly what they were last year, in a way. The issue being, I think, sort of like, if you look at the XG tables, they're kind of, I think they're around about 17th, maybe 16th in like the XG expected points table sort of things. So yeah, they are running high, and it's a question of how long can they run high for? Have they run high enough to not drag them in later on in the year? Because I know that we've got here, what do we expect them to do anything different to normal against Leeds? But I think we're both pretty certain that they're not.
No. Well, I don't see anything different.
And yeah, we then usually ask about the standout players, but it's easier to just discuss their players in general and their team lineup, because some of their standout players are not going to be available for this game and this is part of, again, whether their transfer strategy pays dividends, given the risks that they took, because they have, I think 6-7 players that are at
6 players,
AFCON.
Yeah. 6, yeah.
So yeah, they are Chemsdean Talbi, Noah Siddiqui, Arthur Masuaku, Bertrand Traore, Ronaldo, Mandava, and Habib Diarra. You know, they've played quite a lot of games. 16 starts for Siddiqui, 12 for Ronaldo, 9 for Talbi, 9 for Traore, 4 for Diarra, and 2 for Masuaku. And yeah, having those players, do they have the depth? I guess is the question. It means that they're going to have a different sort of team that's going to be lining up against us. And does AFCON bring the issue of they can't manage their fitness? You know, they're playing intense games abroad, an intense time. They come back. Have they got knocks? Have they got fitness issues later on in the season? So yeah, I guess who that's left, or who's a big miss for them, the most out of them, and who's that left is going to be dangerous, I guess, is my question for you, Martin.
So the players who are going to be the biggest misses, I think Noah Siddiqui is probably the biggest miss for them because he's played the most minutes and I think he has taken to the league quite well. He's pretty intense out of possession and does a lot of hard work in the defending side of things. So he's got a lot of energy and will definitely look to cause problems. And he's also decent enough going forward as well. Can crash rocks relatively well. They've had a lot of game time from Bertrand Traore. And he's also put up quite a lot of their progressive passes and progressive carries, so he could be a bit of a miss for them in this game. And Renildo Mandava has played quite a lot of game time as well, so these players are definitely going to be misses, as well as the other one, Chempty and Talbi, who's also played quite a lot of games for them as well. But the players that they've got left, there is still some threats there, especially the likes of Enzo Lefebvre is a pretty big progressor for them for both carries and from passing. So yeah, and he also does take set pieces as well here and there. And he also, I think he's got the second most assists of them. Randomly enough, their highest assister is Granit Xhaka, which I was not expecting to see from here. He's a quality player that I don't think you can really doubt that.
I think he takes set pieces.
I looked at that because that's what I saw it could be, but most of the assists are open play assists. If you look at the goal creating actions for him, most of them are live passes rather than dead ball passes. Yeah, but yeah, he does also take set pieces as well. You've got the likes of Isidore and Brian Broby. Broby hasn't really played too much across the season, but recently he's been getting more starting games.
390 minutes in total, I think, or something like that. 385.
Yeah, exactly. And at the back, you've got, I think, Nordi Mukiele is their best 1v1 defender. I think he's got around 70% of his dribble duels, which is really, really good going for a fullback. Who he can also slot in as an outside centre back as well. I think he has played both right back and outside centre back for them. So they've still got a few talented players there, but they are definitely missing a lot of talent in there. The Wolf new guy, Alderete, I'm not too sure about him yet. I haven't watched enough for him to really give an opinion as to how good he is at this level, but he's played quite a lot of football for them and they haven't conceded a massive amount of XG, so I would guess he must be largely okay for the level. But I do know that his aerial win rate isn't that great. I think it was around mid-50s, something like that, which isn't all that high. Dan Ballard was a little bit higher, around 60. But yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot of height in this team, so that could be something which we could take advantage of, especially from set pieces.
Yeah, I agree. And just to go through what we think their lineup will be, so it's Luke O'Nien who is suspended, which is a shame because he is like genuinely the best player that they have, technically anyway. That is called humour and satire, people. Barring any disaster, it'll be Royce in goal, Mukiele right back, Alderete, Ballard, and Trey Hume at left back. Xhaka and I reckon probably be Geertruida in the middle. Rig or Mundo we've got, and then Lefebvre and a Dingra in behind. You think Broby due to the fact that he's been picking up minutes recently, but if not Broby, it will be Isidore. Part of me thinks it could be Isidore just because he's played against the Leeds defence before.
And done well.
Yeah, so I've got a feeling that it could be Isidore. If I was Regis Lebris, I feel like I would do something like that. Because what's the word term? The intangibles of playing against a team that you've played well against before.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, as we said, they've obviously done some really good stuff. They're missing some really good players. They managed to draw against Bournemouth at the weekend. Brighton, sorry. So, and actually come out on top in that game with regards to the chances they created. So I think it's just going to be interesting to see, again, how they do without those players that they signed. I think Xhaka's turned out to be a very good signing. I thought that maybe he wouldn't have the physicality for the Premier League anymore, having spent a couple of years in the Bundesliga. Proven wrong, evidently. I still think Trey Hume isn't at Premier League quality, so when we get onto it, if anybody wants to know a little secret, that's going to be where I think the game might be won or lost. But is there anything else on Sunderland that you want to add, Martin?
I don't think so. I think we've covered all the stuff that we need to there. Just quickly on Xhaka, a lot of things run through him for them. He's good out of possession, puts up a lot of numbers for tackles. He's also doing a lot of ball progression. I think he's their best ball progressor. So he did lots of long range passing. He's definitely still got a long range pass in his locker. So if we can try to close down Xhaka, that would help big time. But Lafay, that's what I say, doesn't bother me as much because I think we have the physicality to really cause him problems. He's not the biggest of players and he's been relatively effective for them this season, but I just think that we have an edge in physicality in this one.